Photography isn't just about finding interesting subjects. It's about making the subjects you find interesting. Larry here with Southern Exposure, information and inspiration for the amateur photographer. We all want to find interesting, compelling subjects to photograph, whether that's a striking model for a portrait, a stunning landscape, or a particular species of animal to add to our wildlife portfolio. But that's not the whole story. Anyone can take a snapshot of an interesting subject and call it a good photo. The problem is you're at the mercy of your surroundings. What if nothing particularly interesting catches your attention? I guess you're just not making any photographs that day. What I suggest is that we take a more active role in our photography. You see, it's your job as the photographer to make your subject interesting. Show it to the viewer in a way they wouldn't normally see it. Make the viewer take notice of something they would normally overlook. How do you do that? I've got 3 tips that can help you use your photography to show the world in a unique way. Light is an incredibly powerful tool for the photographer. Use it to your advantage to present your subject in a unique way. For instance, a baseball glove on its own is not a terribly interesting subject. You've probably seen millions of them, especially if you grew up in the US. But pop a simple speed light on a stand, add a homemade snoot of construction paper and gaff tape, and with a little tweaking, you can create a spotlight effect that adds a bit of mystery and nostalgia to the image. All of a sudden, it's not just a baseball glove, it's summertime and Americana and childhood friends you haven't thought of in years. You can also use light as a prop in your photos. One easy way to do this is with battery-powered fairy lights. I spent an entire afternoon photographing my wife and daughter, all inspired by a couple cheap sets of these lights. Camera angle is another great tool. I mentioned nostalgia earlier, and it's one of my favorite emotions to try and elicit because it's just so powerful. Picture of a toy train. No big deal, right? But notice the camera angle. I'm all the way down on the floor, pointing straight at the locomotive. How does that make this a more powerful image? Think about who sees a toy train this way, from this angle. Grown-ups don't. We see it like this, looking down at it from above. But guess who does see a toy train like this? Children. And maybe when you look at this photo, you don't just see a simple toy train, but you see it the way you used to see things as a child. And maybe that makes you feel something. My last tip for making your subject more interesting is to use your camera settings, specifically shutter speed, to manipulate time. And this can go in either direction. You can use a fast shutter speed to freeze a moment in time that would be nearly too fast to even perceive in real time. I love this photo of my daughter playing volleyball in the pool with all of the water droplets frozen in place. Or this image of a Top Fuel dragster wrinkling its tires at the moment of launch. On the other hand, you can also drag your shutter to intentionally blur moving subjects. This is done a lot in landscape photography to blur water or moving clouds, but one of my favorite applications of this technique is photographing fireworks. I just love the way the longer exposure time shows the entire life of the burst as streaks of colored light. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are lots of ways to present your subject in interesting ways, to make the ordinary extraordinary. All it takes is a little tweaking of how we think about photography and some practice. It's like the old cliche where the salesperson's interviewing for a job at a new company and the boss says, "Sell me this pen." So grab your camera and go sell some pens. Thanks for watching.